Hi, my name's Dan, and this video is one in a series of videos that I'm doing on combat in video games. It's part of a wider suite of videos that I'm doing on game design. So in this video, we're going to be looking at how to enhance the combat that you might have designed in a game with thoughts about player tactics, and how to give some tactical choice. One of my rules of game design is this. So we're going to look at various aspects of player tactics that could come into play in your combat. So the first one is weapon choice. And lots of games do this. They provide distinct weapons with different attributes that behave in different ways, especially designed for the gameplay experience, so that you can use these. Here's a choice of guns in one game. Here's a choice of daggers and swords in another. That was just to illustrate, the idea of player choice. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. You can fairly obviously think about that. I have a plan. The reason I don't want to spend a long time is I have a plan in a later video to talk about weapons in much more detail. My plan is to do a whole series of videos on weapons. So I will talk in that series more about the implications of weapon choice and setting up sets of weapons for games. So let's move on. The second thing to talk about is resource management. So any time that you have any kind of limited resource that is used in combat, you add an element of tactical decisions for the player to make. And this particular game has a ammo count down there. I've got a blue arrow pointing towards it. So ammo is a fairly typical one. You need to manage your ammo. You can't just blast in firing as many bullets as you got. You've got to think about how you're going to use them wisely. Another such resource might be mana, or this is from Skyrim, so they call it magicka, but it's the same thing. And it's resource that's used as you're expending your magic, and so you need to think about how you're husbanding that as you play the game. Okay, so moving on, the next one, enemy tactics. And one way to vary what the player has to do in combat is to vary what the enemy does. So varied enemy tactics provides a varied experience. It gives some choice to the player. It actually drives the thought of changing your tactics as you fight different enemies. However, again, I don't want to spend a long time on this because I do have a separate video coming up later on in the enemies set of videos, which is all about enemy AI and tactics that they might use. There's a whole stretch of things to talk about there. Right, so next then, actions and abilities. So as well as your standard attacks, you may have all sorts of other things that the player can do in combat. And this is a screenshot from World of Warcraft. One of the particular things I liked when I was an avid World of Warcraft player was the way they handle combat. And you can see across the bottom here, there's this massive action bar. And the point was that if you selected a target and were in combat in World of Warcraft, the actual basic attack was done automatically for you, and you didn't have to think about it. What you then were left to think about were how to use your extra abilities, which might be magical, or they might be physical abilities, all sorts of things. And these are all these come about as a result of your the choices that you make as you level up, what kind of class you are, and how you're going to spend points on different aspects in the skill tree and stuff like that. So this was very, very customizable, and a lot of these aspects then are actions that you can use, and so you put them in your action bar, and you you use them in combat, but you need to decide when and how to use them. And they have a potentially different costs, minor costs, and several other things that they use. But also, they typically have cooldowns as well. So you want to be thinking about how to interleave these things. So World of Warcraft did this particularly well, in my opinion, in terms of giving you tactics that you can use and develop yourself by different combinations of actions that you might have. Um, the environment can be used to drive different choices from the player. Here's a few examples. You might have the high ground, which gives you particular abilities, which might lead to your sniping or might not. There might be cover available, which leads to particular kinds of gameplay. You might even have things as simple as being able to kick them off a cliff. So they'd be able to drop down. I haven't seen, I'm just going to mention here, I don't think I've ever seen in a game the use of spiral staircases. Um, I don't know if you know that in castles, spiral staircases almost always go in the same direction. And the reason for this is to give an advantage to people fighting on the stairs to those who are above, who are likely to be the defenders. And as they come down the steps, the sweep of the stairs allow a right-handed fighter to use their sword. Whereas when you're going up the steps, the central pillar is in the way of your sword as you go up, which is why spiral staircases always seem to be, as you're going up, turning towards the right. Um, this was a deliberate architectural choice. As I said, I've never seen that in a game and used as an environmental thing, but it could be. Um, and again, I guess a way of turning this on its head is the question of how would you to determine um, different environments and getting the player to use different weapons and think about their uses. Where would you use, for example, a shotgun? And a shotgun is particularly useful when you don't need when you're trying to fire quickly and you don't want to be spending a long time aiming, but only at a short distance. Go into more details in the weapons suite of videos, but shotguns, as you probably know, spread out shot. You can get a cone of shot, so they're not just one projectile. Where would you use a sniper rifle? Obviously, you need to have a point where you're at a distance and you've got clear sight. Where would you use a rocket launcher? And I maybe would suggest that if you've got enclosed spaces, especially if the rockets do damage to the player as well as the enemy, which I would strongly encourage you to build into your game design if you're having rocket launchers. Um, to have this choice, you want wide open spaces to use rocket launchers. Where would you use a chain gun, which fires very fast and you can sweep around with? So it's like a fast machine gun, and you want to be using those in kind of crowded situations. Um, and then finally, want to think about player tactics. I guess this is part of tactical choice, but different players will naturally gravitate towards different tactics. But if you want them to be making tactical choices, you want to potentially give situations in which they can use these tactics, but also give them situations in which they're at a disadvantage if they use their favorite tactic, and so that they are more likely to vary their tactics and give them choices. So some might like a reckless charge to run in. The thing you obviously need for this is as many bullets as possible, lots of armor, and lots of accuracy and ability and speed to be able to pull this off. Or you can wait and snipe. This is kind of more my style of combat. To stay at a distance, try and pick people off one by one, if that's at all possible. Um, yeah, you might have cover and peep. You peep out from behind your cover. Here's a game in which you can actually do what's called a blind shot around the corner. And I couldn't find a picture for this, but pulling. If you've got a group of mobs or enemies and you manage to aggro one of them and then draw them away from the rest, this assumes that The AI for your enemies means that they don't automatically call for all of the rest to get involved. So this is typically done with a ranged attack, and you get to just about nicely within distance where you can use your ranged attack, find the nearest one, fire at them, and then back off so that that one individual comes away from the rest of the group, and it will allow you to pick off a group of enemies one by engaging them one at a time. Obviously, in co-op playing, there's lots more tactics that come into play. There's all sorts of standard tactics using things called tanks and DPS and tank healer DPS combination. But all sorts of things can be set up there. So I'm not going to start trying to enumerate those. But if you've got that sort of situation, again, that gives you another dimension to think about when you're designing is how do you encourage the players to explore different tactics and different tactical choices. It's all about giving this varied experience to the players, and allowing them to have these choices and to work out what the best choices are for their combat situation. So that's been a quick rundown of some things you might want to think about in a game design when trying to get tactical choice into your combat. That's it from me for now.